OuterOrange. Hey guys, Privyetsia, OuterOrange here, and we are here to discuss the Granblue profile for standard 2020 with the new NIGHTROSE and everything. So let's go ahead and discuss it. This is gonna be a pretty in-depth video. If you want the short version of it, the descriptions are down below. In the description I have a link to it so you can watch my short speedrun version of this deck. But if you want the elongated, all good explanation, then stay tuned. We'll discuss it today. So let's go ahead. Alright guys, we are here. We're going to discuss it. We're going to start with our grade 3s. We're going to start with NIGHTROSE. NIGHTROSE is our first grade 3 card that we'll be talking about today. Just to give you guys a better idea of what she does. Her skill is when your rear guard attacks or boosts, that unit gets 5k until the end of that battle. Retire that unit at the end of that battle. When it attacks, counterblast. This is our Vanguard skill, both Vanguard skills. Choose a column, call up to 2 cards from the drop zone to rear guard in that column, and if your opponent's grade 3 or greater, this unit also gets 10k. So the way this card works, it's a multi-attacking card. And she pretty much gains you an extra way to attack, and this builds really well into other parts of the deck, and we'll be discussing it. I'm going to move her to the side and actually talk about another card that I think works well with this card, and that is Ice Prison NECROMANCER Cocytus. So the reason why I run Cocytus in this deck is because NIGHTROSE has a lot of weaknesses in terms of hand size. You have to call stuff to the board to be able to attack based off how her skills work, whereas Necromancer does the opposite. You call stuff from your drop zone without having to use your hand at all. And some of the ways you want to utilize this is you want to ride this first and then go into this on top, and that way you're building your hand and you're also going to have really high attacks, and by the time you get to her, you'll have a drop zone ready to go, making your multi-attacks very lethal. So we run 3 copies of NIGHTROSE and 3 copies of Necromancer to kind of like build one into the other and have a really good finishing turn. Lastly, we also run 2 Skull Dragons to kind of finish up the build for the grade 3s, making it 8 total. Your Skull Dragons, your finisher attack, it's kind of like what you want to do at towards the end of the game, and with how much milling you do with Necromancer and how much multi-attacking you do with NIGHTROSE, this makes your Skull Dragon attacks extremely lethal, and it makes it so that you pretty much close the game on your NIGHTROSE turn while not dying early on because you have Necromancer. So with this grade 3 build, it kind of helps you to pretty much just rack up a really nice drop zone and end the game. I'll be discussing in more detail about like some synergies with these cards, but for the time being, we're just going to go over the deck profile, and that ends our grade 3s. Going on to grade 2, we have 2 Ghost Ship. So Ghost Ship is a good way to draw. His skill is when it attacks, it gets 24k, and then on top of that, you retire at the end of battle and you draw a card. So one, this self retires, which is really good against decks that like stuff on the board. This is a good way to avoid having stuff on the board. The other thing, it's an extra draw, and it's also a 24k attacker, and on NIGHTROSE's, because everything that attacks or boosts gets 5k, it also becomes a 29k. So this is good. This is good for numbers. It's good for pressure. Just a really good overall card. We run 2 because you can't guard with this, and also you can't just call it to the board. It has to be called from drop zone in some form or way. So it does have some restrictions. So that's why we put it at 2. Next we have Colombard. So this is Pirate Swordsman Colombard, a new addition to the deck, a complete must-have staple. This propels the deck so well. Its skill is when placed, counterblast, search from something from your deck, mill it out, and then when you mill something out, you call something from your deck, from your drop zone to the board. So pretty much you can call stuff like this out onto the board, and you know, even your Skull Dragons. Skull Dragons can come to the board from this. A lot of really nice stuff you can bring out. Banshee's another one. We'll see her in a little bit. But pretty much this just gives you the ability to literally call anything out, and you can do this on your. It's a Vanguard rearguard skill, so you can do this straight off the bat on your turn, on your grade 2 turn. So this really makes the deck go a lot faster. Colombard kind of enabled the speed of the deck. It is a once per turn skill, so keep in mind you can only do this once. But there are other cards that can kind of help to manipulate this some more, because this is a one-place skill, so you can actually enable a multi-attack with this card because it is one place and you can call other stuff out. But we'll discuss that in a little bit about all the other things you can do with Colombard. Next we have 3 Rune Shades. So Rune Shade is a miller card. Pretty much it states when it attacks Vanguard, you mill 2 cards. and you get 4k, so she becomes a 13k. And then her other skill is if your drop zone has 10 or more cards, then you also gain another 4k, so she becomes an 18k beater. So what's really nice about her is if you have her early on, you can set up your drop zone a lot faster. And her other thing is that she actually is an annoying card that hits. She hits force numbers because she's a 13k if you are attacking force. She hits any force numbers in general. That being said, meaning if you're on your grade 2 turn and you're going against force that's a 10k base, this will always hit. And it sets up your drop zone. A lot of people kind of avoid this card because it mills, or some people just don't like this card. I will agree this isn't like the best triple R that Granblue has, but it's also not bad. It forces you to, it gives pressure to your opponent because it does give really nice numbers. It mills, so if you have 2 on the board, you can instantly set up your drop zone really fast, as you can get able up to 4 mills in one turn, along with Greed Shade and Necromancer and other things. You can mill through your deck really fast to kind of set up for NIGHTROSE really a lot faster. I like that she attacks. She becomes a really high number. On NIGHTROSE's turn, she gets even higher. I overall think this is a card that's really good, and I'm surprised more people don't run it. It's not, you know, like I said, not the best card. There are a lot of grade 2 options. This is, I just feel like currently in Granblue, this should still be an option. And I've been playtesting it, and I've yet to have any issues with it. Late game, you want to avoid this card as much as possible, but early game, this card's good. So, run 3 of that. Lastly, I think it's lastly, we run 3 of Greed Shade. Now, with Greed Shade, I do recommend, if you like Greed Shade to like your max potential, I do recommend putting him at 4. I'll explain why I put him at 3. So, early game, this card's like absolutely amazing. Really good. I can talk about this card for literally 4 hours and hours and hours, and I can pull a whole solo in Vanguard about why this card's super good. The reason why I put it to 3 is because late game, it's really hard to utilize this card. But before, one of the main reasons that this falls into the same issue, these both require milling, and late game you don't want to mill anymore, and this card becomes a dead card in the zone. And I would rather prioritize other cards to push late game than have this out on the board or anything. But this is a really good card. However, there's so many ways to fetch it or get to it that it's really not that big of a deal to run it at 3, especially even with like things like Colombard. There are ways to get it now to where I feel like you don't, it's not a must. It can be a must because this card's just really good, but you don't like have to prioritize putting this card at 4. And so I put it at 3 because like it's good, and I have yet have any issues where I don't see this card enough. Usually once I see it once, that's it. I only need to see it once, and the other 2 that are doing whatever, they're kind of dead cards. This does have a nice 5k when you have 10 and drop, and its other skill, as I should probably explain, is when placed, you discard a card, and you can bring something, you mill 2 cards and bring something back to hand. Really good early on, not so great later on, but early on this card's absolutely a beast because you can bring back crits, you can bring back heals, you can bring back your ride target, you can bring back pretty much anything you need. You can bring back your Tommies. You can bring back so much because this brings it back to hand. You literally can take any card from your drop zone and bring it back to your hand. So it's really, really solid. Like I said, really good early on. It does fall off late game because late game we only have like 3 main circles that attack. That's rearguard, vanguard, rearguard. So that being said, there does come a point where you have to prioritize what you want on the board, and typically it's going to be between your Skull Dragon, your Banshees, your Ghost Ships, your Colombards, your Ruin Shades, and any grade 1 attackers that are worth putting in. So what I'm getting at is it's really hard to find a spot for this sometimes on the board. So that's why I put it at 3, because once I use it a couple times, I forget the card exists in the drop zone because I'm focusing on high numbers at that point, which is usually Skull Dragon and Ghost Ship. So I put it at 3. And then I think this is our last grade 2. Yes, so our last grade 2 is Captain Nightmist. Now this is the card that you can exchange for to have an extra one of these, because all this card does is it enables a multi-attack. Its skill is when placed, counterblast, call grade 1 or less from your drop zone, but if you have 10 or more, you can call whatever you want. So essentially this is an attack extender to this card. If there are circumstances where you use this already and then you can't multi-attack anymore if you have to use this early, so what you can do is you can then use this instead, and that way you can still have a multi-attacking system going without having the restriction of once per turn. Because this says once per turn, this says you can do it as much as you want. So you can actually call this retire it and call it again to do a multi-attack if you want. It's a lot of CB, but you can do that. This is, once it's done, that's it. You can't do it again for that turn. So that's why I run one of these. You can take this out and put in an extra ghost ship or an extra greed shade if you want. That's completely up to you. I recommend running it. Some people even run it at 2. I put it at 1 because this is like, if you see it cool, you can use it. If not, you can work around it. But having it in your drop zone means you don't have to work around this. You can choose to not use this and just completely abuse this. It's completely up to the game, and the game will kind of dictate like what you want to do with this. But sometimes if you just don't see Colombard at all and you see this instead, you can at least still enable your multi-attacking system with Skull Dragons. So that's why I run 1. Going on to our grade 1, we have 3 Necrobone. Necrobone is another really amazing card that got added into Granblue. This card completely makes Granblue just so much better. Its skill is in the drop zone. You discard a card, put this at the bottom of the deck, and call whatever you want from your drop zone to the board. So usually what you want to do with it is you want to call Skull Dragons. Usually this is late game because you're discarding for this. So usually the best tactic is to discard a Necrobone to put a Necrobone to the bottom to call a Skull Dragon, to then discard a Skull Dragon to put it to the bottom to call another Skull Dragon. That's usually the best tactic you can do. You always want to make sure you at least have 1 Necrobone in your drop zone just in case. There are situations where having the extra Necrobone will save you. Like say you survive a turn and both Necrobones are in your deck, but you have 1 in your drop zone because you just used the other 2 for the game before. The turn before, you can still use it and bring back another Skull Dragon. It's happened to me, and it really this card really saves you in some really tough situations. If you are stuck in a situation where you can't use Counterblast, like you can't utilize this, or you can't get your Colombard to work, whatever it is, this card fixes all those problems, which is really nice. This card is definitely good. The only thing about this card is it's only a drop zone card, so I run it at 3. 4 is a little too much. If you see it too much, you don't really need to. You don't want to ride this. You kind of don't want to ride this. You want to just guard with it and call it a day. So I run it at 3, and 2 is just not enough. You need more than 2, but 3 is a really good combination for a really good number for the card. Next we have 3 Tommies. Tommy is an all-around really good card, specifically in Granblue. So normally this is a grade 3 searcher. I actually have an entire video explaining what this card does, and you can check that out. It's also going to be in the description. This card is a grade 3 searcher, but in Granblue it accelerates so much more than just a grade 3 searcher. It becomes a 13k booster when you have 5 or more in drop, which is really easy to get to. By the time you get to your grade 3 turn, you will have your 5 or more in drop, so this is just really good for that. Another thing is searches for your Skull Dragons. And the best part about this is if you, the skill says to discard a card, you can just discard your Skull Dragon. You don't need your Skull Dragon in hand. You want him out of your hand. This is one of the greatest things that you can do to utilize this card's skill. On top of the fact that it does hit force numbers, if you decide to put it to the front and have it attack, it will still hit force. Really good stuff. This is a good card. Like some people usually will replace this with Navigator. I like it because I like seeing my rides. I like seeing my numbers hit. I just like it overall. So I think this is a good card, and I think it will continue to be good in Granblue in the future. So we're on 3 of those. Next we have 3 Cutlasses. So this is your counter charger pretty much. This is how you, in case you run into a situation where your opponent tries to counter blast starve you, or you just use too many counter blasts a turn because you weren't careful or something. But this will kind of save you from that. You pretty much mill a card. You bind one of these. If you have to have 2 in drop, pretty much. You have 2 in drop, you bind 1, you call 1 out to the board, and you countercharge and mill a card. That's pretty much like the entire sentence here. It's really well worded, by the way. But so this is a really good card to just enable countercharging and just get your NIGHTROSE attacks to be more lethal, or whatever it is you need to do with your counterblast. This gets it to you. I don't run it at 4 because usually you don't need it at 4. That's just me. Like usually I countercharge twice and that's it. I'm kind of done. Like I usually don't need to countercharge a 3rd time. It's really rare when I'm in weird situations where I need counterblasts that much. I know some of it is about just seeing the card. Because we mill through and go through a deck and draw so much, it's almost like hard to miss this card, like along with like, you know, Greed Shade and other cards, you go through your deck in a really, really nice pace to where you usually don't have a problem where you don't see the cards you need to see. You'll usually see them because all the cards in the deck are all useful in ways. And again, Colombard is the thing. If you really need counter charges, you can always use Colombard to get into your drop to call something else to then counter charge. There are ways to manipulate your cards and toolbox your cards out to where you like Granblue is one of the few decks that can get away with 1-ofs and 3-ofs and just weird numbers because of just how the deck works. So I run at 3. I think 4 is excessive. The card's a 6k base, keep in mind. 6k base is really painful if you have to ride it. I don't want to ride this card, so I'd rather see my other grade 1s over this card. So that's just me, but we run at 3. Going on to, I think this probably should be almost our last one. So we have Banshee. Banshee works really well. Her skill is when placed from drop zone, you Soul Blast and draw a card, and she becomes a 12k attacker. Banshee is super nice with Colombard and with Ghost Ship and just anything that enables you to draw more, and also it increases your drop zone because you're Soul Blasting, and Soul Blasting goes to your drop zone. So it's just a really good card. You only need 2 of because, like I said, it kind of has a similar restriction to Ghost Ship. The only thing is you can actually guard with this. You don't really usually want to ride this because once you ride it, it's kind of really hard to get it out because you can only get it out with one more copy. So usually, typically, this is one of the cards you want to see the least of unless it's in drop. You only want to see it in drop, and you can use Colombard to get it out. There's so many other ways to manipulate this, so I run it at 2, but it's a really good card. It gets you to draw, gets you to do a lot of work. It's a really nice overall card. Definitely need it in your deck. Lastly, this is my tech card, but I run 1 Surreal the Ghosty. Surreal Ghosty is a really interesting card. I'm really big into making my columns as annoying as possible, and what this card does is Vanguard, Rear Guard, or Guard Circle. This gets 10k intercept, 10k power. So on your rear guard, it's an 18k attacker. On your guard circle, it's a 20k guard shield. So this is a 20k guard, which is literally the same as a heal trigger. So this gives you that extra push of having ways to stay alive. And on top of that, if you put this behind like Necromancer or NIGHTROSE, behind Necromancer, this becomes a 50k attacker. Like with Necromancer, it's a 50k 2 crit late game, which is your opponent has to guard it if they want to survive. So if they don't have a perfect guard, they're gonna have to take 2 crit, 50k, all this crazy stuff to the face. And I'll explain more so why I have this card in deck once we talk about the triggers. But this is a very tech card. I can honestly take this out and put another Banshee or another Tommy or whatever. I just like it because I think it actually does work. It's one of those cards where people don't expect it, and then I throw it down and they're like, wait, what? Like, what? That guard's with how much? Wait, that's boosting for how much? I used to, if Flanger was still a thing, I would definitely run like 2 of these, like no doubt about it, because this will make Flanger so much more lethal and so much more harder to guard. But this is the highest booster we currently have. There's one more, but it forces you to mill, and we don't want to mill that much. So I run this guy instead because he is good in my hand. He is good on the board, all around good card. In the drop zone, I can call him out too if I just want my every attack to be even more annoying. I think this is overall good card, but like I said, this is a tech card. You can tech this out, like again, for another Banshee, another Tommy, Navigator, whatever it is you need. This is my tech. This is how I run my Granblue deck. You're not forced to run this. It's just what I run. Again, you can always change it out for something else. So keep in mind, I just like it because I think it helps me. But you know, this is how Vanguard and deck cards work. Sometimes you got to put in the weird stuff. All right, going on to our triggers. We're gonna start with the Sentinels. Oh boy, I just dropped a Sentinel. So I run 4 Sentinels, and they're all 30k crit Sentinels. And as funny as it sounds, I have a video explaining about these cards too, but I'll briefly talk about it in here as well. So I run these over draw because we go through our deck really fast. And while we go through our deck really fast, I want every attack to be as lethal potential as possible. If I could run like all 16 crit, I might even consider it, but I'm currently keeping to the 12 crit for heal. But long story short, Granblue is really nice with 12 crit because you draw so much and you go through your deck so well, and being able to make your Skull Dragon attacks as lethal as possible is really nice. Making your Necromancer turns as dumb as possible is really nice. A 50k swinging Vanguard in a 12 crit deck is really spicy. You can sack your opponent without even intending to sack your opponent, and that's one of the reasons why I run it. I don't think think this works really well in a pure NIGHTROSE deck, but because we do have a NECROMANCER in the deck, this actually works really nicely. On top of the fact that this is a 30k guard, and it makes it so much easier to guard with against force numbers. On top of that, this works really well with this card. Having this card in your deck and using this to fetch this out makes it so that you actually have more than just 4 of these. You technically have more. If you keep Greechading and you can discard like your Skull Dragon, bring this back, that is so valuable. You discard this thing that literally does nothing in terms of your hand to pick up one of these, which is a 30k block. That is value times 100. The value is just so nice, and that's part of the reason why I love this card. Or like, again, like this is another example. You discard this that you can't guard with to pick up one of these. Like there's just so many ways that you can just make your just situation so much better, and that's another reason why I run all 4. Like I said, the deck really mills fast. You don't really need draw. You don't even want to think about having to draw and having that potential of decking out. We don't want to think about decking out in this deck. Decking out is not our purpose. Our purpose is to kill, and that's why I think that this really helps with both shield value and lethality. And I'll talk about more about another thing that this card really helps with. But going into our next, we have our heal triggers. I guess I kind of put it weirdly. We have our 4 heals because you need heals. Along with that, we also have 4 crits, and then we have lastly 4 more crits. So this is like the full like pretty much trigger lineup you want, along with your Sentinels. And like I said, we're going for the full lethal deathbed type of situation here. You want to kill your opponent. You draw so much that you can get away with going 12 crit in this deck, especially with riding Necromancer. So we are done talking about the triggers. Now I want to discuss just like the little stuff. So of course you want, did I do my triggers upside down? I'm sorry if I did. But we have our starter. You obviously need a quick shield. Those are really important. Now I want to go into the gifts markers. So let's go back to our boy Necromancer and NIGHTROSE. Something I want to talk about in terms of Protect 2. So this is, as weird as it sounds, because I've been playtesting a lot, you can get away with going Protect 2 if you have both of these cards in deck. And it's actually really, really nice. So the reason why I say this is because we have this card. It exists. And because we have this card, you can actually go Protect 2. Now keep in mind, if you are going against a board wipe clan like Murakumo or something, and you don't have NIGHTROSE and you have Necromancer as your Vanguard, it might be not the best thing to go Protect 2. Keep in mind, I'm not saying go Protect 2 in every matchup. I'm just saying you have the option, you have a better option to go Protect 2 in this particular deck. Protect 2 isn't as bad in this deck. If you just go straight NIGHTROSE, don't go Protect 2. If you are going against matchups that really utilize board wiping you, don't go Protect 2. But you have the option to if you don't have those concerns. And the reason why I say that is because what happens is you're choosing to ride your Necromancer first, which gets you a Protect marker. And then when you ride NIGHTROSE, you get another Protect 2 marker. And what's really nice is on NIGHTROSE's turn, you have a column that's extremely lethal. This column will kill whatever you have here, whether it's this, it doesn't matter what's here, it's going to be hitting for extremely high numbers. Even this, you don't even need that booster anymore. What Protect 2 does is it just makes it really, really strong. Another thing that's nice about Protect 2, say we are over here and you have this on the board, this becomes a 15k guard. On top of the fact that you have these in your hand, this is a 45k guard value. This makes it so that on your Necromancer turn, when your opponent is attacking, you are not dying. Especially if they can't retire your stuff, you can intercept. This goes into your drop zone. You are now safe. You have another card in your drop zone to set you up for next turn. It really helps you. Like I've had matches where I just have 45k block just because, and that'll literally save me, and then I ride this and I end the game. And that's kind of what I want to explain about Protect 2, mainly the focus of what these cards can do. It's really nice. Of course, Protect 1 is still a really, really good card. A really good Protect. Of course, most of the time you're probably going to go this, but you actually can go Protect 2 and get away with it because it really works. It does work. You just need to know your matchups. I can't stress that enough. I talk about it with Greechade cards all the time. The Granblue, you must know your matchups. This deck particularly isn't a Unga Boonga, you attack for high numbers and win. You need to know what you're doing, what you're grabbing, what you're bringing out, and depending on how you're doing that, that will change your game. So please keep in mind, know your matchups. That's why Protect 2 exists. Protect 2 is for those very particular matchups where it works. You don't always want to go Protect 2, but you have the option to. So yeah, I want to talk about that. Next, I wanted to talk about Colombard. So some things to note with Colombard, things you want to bring out. Some things you want to bring out with Colombard, like main key cards. If I could find my main key card. Where are you at? The main key cards you want to bring out. Stuff like this, because it gets you to draw and it propels your deck. Stuff like this, in case you really just need to Soul Blast it out as quickly as possible. And of course, stuff like this. So for your mill, you want to make sure you mill these 3, like guaranteed. What you call kind of depends on you. If you already have one of these in drop, you might want to call this. If you need draw but want a booster, you can call this. If you want a bigger attacker, you call this. If you just want swing for high, you call this. You kind of have options of what you want to call. Sometimes it might even be important to call one of these out if you have this. If you just really need a way to filter your hand to get better cards in hand and, you know, just be able to mill some more just to attack the mill. Because what's nice about this is that this is a discard cost. It's free. You can just keep doing it. It is a one-play skill. You can spam it. Keep in mind that you want to make sure you spam it in the right way. Like you want to make sure you're picking up good cards to spam it with, and to make it worth the discard. So yeah, this is that. And then I also wanted to discuss Greed Shade. Greed Shade is extremely important in this deck, and one of the main things that you want to make sure you do correctly. If you don't do it correctly, you're gonna have a hard time. So some of the main things that you usually want to discard for it is these 2. These are the main 2 cards you want to discard for, and this is what you want to pick it up for. I kind of already explained this a little bit earlier in the video, but you really want to aim, or it's either this or honestly like a heal trigger or like a crit trigger. Like normally what you do is when you discard for certain cards, you're either picking up with Green Shade, you're going to discard these 2, but you're going to pick up one of these. You're going to pick up your Ride target, a Sentinel, or you're going to pick up shield value. The main reason why is because what pretty much you're doing with Greed Shade is you're filtering out your hand to have a better drop zone, and B, to have a better hand for your next turn. So that's why Greed Shade is so nice, because you can do that. So you want to discard these to set up for your drop zone. You want to pick up these to either set up your Ride target or set up your hand for guarding. You of course can pick up, another thing you can pick up with your Greed Shade is something like this. In case you don't see your Ride target, you can also put this down. You can discard this to mill 2 to grab this to instantly play this to find stuff like this. If you want to like look for top 5 or get your Skull Dragon out, that's something you can do. Just keep in mind your whatever shield value you pick up, you're pretty much discarding it pretty much right away by putting it to the board. But it is another option that you have that the deck provides you. You can also pick this up too, you know, just for shield value if you're at 15 and you need a 20k, and say you need that 20k just in case. But also keep in mind this is like better than the heal, because the heal you pick up you can only guard with it. This you can actually put to the board. In case you do not end up guarding with it, you can put it to the board and swing on your NIGHTROSE turns. This is another really good pickup to kind of help you out. This card is really nice to pick up with this because it's 20k value, and like I said, it's an 18k booster on your next turn. So in case you do somehow survive or you avoided guarding with this, you can put it to the board and pretty much make your columns even more strong. And that's honestly really it. That's mainly what I wanted to discuss to you guys. I kind of wanted to do a really big in-depth profile about what you can do. I guess I should talk about one more thing, but I think it's kind of already common knowledge. You can enable multi-attacks with NIGHTROSE and Colombard. Just I guess something Colombard or Night Mist. So keep in mind when you attack with your NIGHTROSE, and well, you attack with this first, this retires. You attack with NIGHTROSE, you can call out a Skull Dragon to then call out a Colombard, which enables you to mill something out and call something else to the board, which gives you another Skull Dragon. So you can pretty much have a prepared, ready Skull Dragon. And like I said, if you go Protect 2, ooh, your boy just got bigger. Your boy just got bigger. Hey, some people do try to hard guard some of these, but this will just make this even more lethal. If you land some crits on top of that, it's pretty much game over for your opponent at that point. So really, really nice stuff that you can do on your NIGHTROSE turn, especially if you set up your Protect 2. Protect 1 is also really good. Like I said, never deny it. You can even go ships into these which is actually really nice. Going Ghost Ship instead is really good too, because it gives you draw. On top of the fact you can put your protect just to make it even more stronger. There's just so many things that you can do, so many ways you can just lethal. You can also, if you want, you can go Necromancer. You can Necrobone. When I get to them, you can bone twice, or you can use, in case, let's say you're down to 4 cards and you can't use this skill, you can bone twice to get both of these out, and then put, in case if you have it, you can put this in the back row, and this is now attacking for 50. And where's my other Skull Dragon? There he is. This is attacking for 50 to the Vanguard. This is attacking for stupid high, and this is attacking for stupid high at this point. And then if you land triggers, these go really high, because usually your opponent will super guard this, but then they'll have to think about how to take these. So that's something else you can do on your Necromancer turn if you don't see NIGHTROSE. So yeah, those are some of the many ways that you can pretty much approach the deck. There are so many things you can do in this type of deck, and that's why it took me so long to kind of get this out. I have been playtesting this deck for a very long time, since the release of NIGHTROSE, and I've been wanting to discuss this deck and all the things that it can do for quite some time now, and I'm very happy to finally be able to talk about it with you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the deck profile. I hope it helps you learn something new about our good old Granblue stuff. Granblue is a insanely fun deck. I hope if you guys decide to pick it up, I hope you guys try it out, like to think about like what you want to put in your deck. If you want to go the Navigator build, the Necromancer build, the NIGHTROSE build, the whatever your focus is. There's so many things you can do because it's such a toolboxy deck. And you guys tell me how you feel, what you guys like about the deck, or what are some styles that you do in the deck and all that fun stuff. And I'll be happy to talk about it. If you guys have some questions, please feel free to drop them in. I'll put them in another video, and all that fun stuff. So thank you guys as always for watching, and I'll catch you guys in a future video of Vanguard. Woo! Alright, bye guys. Peace and da svidanya. Bye!